I'm trying to remember the name of our podcast. Charlie, what's our roadmap? Real Estate Riches.
Yep.
Okay, we're not the best podcasting people, but we do know something about real estate, hopefully. Anyway, so here's our podcast. We're going to talk about real estate. We sometimes have some tales. You might call them basement tales, but that's not what we're calling it anymore. And we've got Charlie Einsman, who's our deal finder and all-around nice guy, problem causer. And then we've got Sam Jackman, who is our executor. That doesn't sound so
Executioner.
good. He's our executioner. Once he gets a project in, Sam makes it go well no matter what Charlie has handed us. And then if things go badly, then they get me involved as the lawyer. And as Charlie likes me to say, I'm a lawyer. I'm not your lawyer. So whatever I'm saying is hopefully educational. But Charlie, we've got a terrific guest on today. That's the more important thing.
We do. And we have a great guest on tonight, or today, or wherever you're listening to the podcast, Rob Chevez. And we've known Rob. How long have we known? We've known each other since what, 2008 probably?
Yeah. I've known of you guys since that long for sure. Like we were reminiscing last night of the first time I ever heard of you was when I bought a property from one of you guys.
Right.
Yeah, that dates us to Green Dot Realty's business.
And so Rob's got an extensive background in real estate investing. You also have probably one of the bigger teams in EXP now, correct?
Correct. Yep.
And then so Rob just recently went from Keller Williams to EXP, and you're working with a good friend of ours, Leo Pereira, who is the CEO of EXP. And so I guess what I want to do is I want to transition a little bit and tell folks about your real estate investing background. Tell them about your agent background. Tell them, about EXP, about how many agents are currently on your team. Let's just hear it from you and how it's going.
Sure. How about I start at the beginning, bring us forward real fast. I'll try to make a long story short, right? So I started house hacking, like so many people, right? I house hacked the first house in 1998 or 99. I just recently started a recruiting business with my best friend, pretty much right out of college. We're replacing tech sales people, right? For mid-size software companies and like actually any real sales. Like we did it for Cintas, we did it for Enterprise Rent-A-Car, but eventually we ended up like on mid-level salespeople. And I was making a lot of money, right? As a young kid, right out of college, placing my friends and then later sales managers and VPs of sales. And I did that through the dot-com boom. So, right, 98, 99, 2000, like I was making a ton of money in 2000. I was like, oh my God, my parents worked all these years like suckers. I'm going to be done in like whatever that meant, right? Like I'm going to be done like soon, right? I had no idea what like money and wealth and all that meant, right? And what happened was life course corrected us, right? 2001 happened, 9/11, and it started slowing down. And I didn't realize that literally the economy could come to a grinding halt. Like for us, it came to a grinding halt in tech recruiting in the summer or like the spring of 2002.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I want you guys to picture this. I'm in my mid 20s. I just had a baby girl. I just bought a single family house in McLean. And I remember turning to my wife and saying, if I make half as much as I make today, we'd still be okay, right? Guys, I made like a quarter of what I had made in years past, right? And I didn't realize it was like somebody had turned off the spigot of just opportunity. I had people coming to me that were making $400,000 a year looking for jobs. And I was like, maybe I can get you something with a base of 40 and an upside of 80. Like the market had really changed. Yeah. It gotten out of whack. But what kept me alive, guys, was that in 99, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, I was buying real estate. I was taking the money that I was making and I was just buying, a property a year. And I remember having to fill the hole, right? I wasn't making as much income from that recruiting business, and I would just sell an asset, and it would kind of fill the hole.
Yeah.
Wow.
And what was happening was I was falling in love with real estate. And I realized that the fundamental problem with that recruiting business was that every month you started zero. Every month you started zero. And I was like, I don't want to start at zero every month. I'd love to be able to do something one time and get paid forever. And so I was like, well, I don't want to compete with my best friend starting what you would call like a consulting practice, dollar per hour type of stuff.
Right.
And he didn't want to launch that business. So I was like, how do I do that in my life? And I was like, well, maybe I do it through real estate, right? So I started buying rental real estate. And by the summer of '05, that business had come back. We'd gone through the dot-com boom. Survived through the dot-com bust. We had to fire a lot of our friends. It was 3 partners running that business. And by the summer of '05, it was that business was back. And I remember turning to my wife and said, we're back, but I'm not in love with this space. I'm in love with real estate. But the problem is, I think that real estate is going to go through some kind of correction. Because you guys remember what the summer of '05 felt like, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I think I want to be a real estate investor full-time in the summer of '05, right? Mm-hmm. And no plan, no model, no mentor. YouTube wasn't like it is today.
Right.
I was like, I'm just going to go flip houses and be, a landlord, to buy a bunch of rental properties, and those rental properties are going to pay for my life. Right. And I just remember that was my basic plan.
Sounds good to me.
Well, I remember putting a property. Do you guys remember the name John Peterson? Does that ring a bell?
I love John Peterson. That's my good friend of mine.
Okay, so John Peterson,
Yep.
I remember he was running a RIA, and I was going to that RIA. And I remember I was about to put a property under contract for a fix and flip in Sterling. And I said, John, I want to buy this property. It's kind of thin. I think I can make it work. And he's like, hey, well, you feel good about it. I just screw it, do it, right? And so I put it under contract. It was a $10,000 non-refundable fee, with a $10,000 non-refundable fee. And then I started looking around and saying, that property should have sold. Remember, this was when everything was selling in days, right?
05, 06,
and now I started seeing inventory on the market for 2 weeks, and I'm like, well, that's kind of odd. And I was looking at some other inventory, it's been on for 3 weeks. I'm like, that's kind of odd. So I got cold feet, right? And I went to the seller and I said, sir, I'm so sorry. I'm not going to be able to buy this property. I'm hoping you'll let me out of the contract, right? This is a $10,000 non-refundable fee. And I'm hoping you'll give me my $10,000, non-refundable back, and I'll pay you a little bit of money to get out of it, right? And he looked at me. He was probably, an older gentleman, probably a landlord, had a lot of properties, and he probably saw a kid that was a little bit, in over his head. And he said, well, how much are you willing to pay to get out of the contract? And I was like, $300, right?
There you go. That's a good start. I like that. I like that.
And he said, because you're a nice guy, I'll let you out.
Wow.
And he let me out of that contract for $300.
So you got back $9,700.
Right.
I got $9,700
Right.
back. And guys, if I had bought that property, I would have been, just because of the timing of the market, I would have lost money for sure, right? It would have been
Wait a minute, shocker!
50,
You can lose money in real estate? I didn't know that.
It can happen. It can happen.
No lose. Everyone.
Yeah.
So I started looking around and asking myself, well, the numbers here just don't make sense in Nova, and I'm a buy and hold guy anyway. So where should I be buying real estate? And I was like, well, let me go to a submarket where real estate is really cheap, and the cash flow is really good, and maybe I should be buying in these submarkets, right? Well, that's a whole nother can of worms. I won't go down all that. But I spent the next 5 years.
But this is the Hagerstown, Cumberland market areas, right?
That's right. So I spent the next 5 years buying 30 to 40 houses a year, fixing and flipping them, learning the game of real estate investing, low dollar, lowish risk, because that market never kind of boomed. It never really busted. It just kind of stayed the same. You can make money in markets like that, but it was in trading assets, not so much buying and holding, because the assets, buying and holding the tenant pool is just like terrible, right?
Right.
Especially in the neighborhoods that I was buying in. On paper, they looked really good, right? I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make like $700 a month, and then next thing you realize, it's like, dude, I'm losing $700 a month, right? So, we got the bright idea. We were buying these multifamily properties, fixing them up, selling them to investors, turnkey, and then the investors were asking us to manage the assets for them. So we were like, sure, we'll manage the assets. It doesn't matter that we live in Reston, Virginia, and that this is 2.5 hours away from where we live.
That's the bad part of owning rentals. Like, basically, yeah, that's pretty smart on their part.
But what were you charging to manage them at the time?
Oh my God! Just like listen, this is like cluster F after cluster F of business lessons, right?
8%, right?
Like I was charging 10%.
Oh, okay.
10%. But 10% of $500, guys, is like $50, right? And then we had like a built-in maintenance company. So, but think about this. After I want to say it's like 18, it might have been like 24 months. My wife had 300 assets under management. Some were ours, most were investors, and it was a nightmare, right? That's probably the way. Like we were managing 300 assets.
Such a nightmare.
Low, like I mean, making like no money, right? But I always kind of consider that period like my MBA period.
Yes, of course.
Your life MBA.
Instead of it taking 2 years, though, it took like 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
But we built in a maintenance company, and that's really where we were making money, was like on the maintenance side of that business, right?
But
so we
you
had
still have that
a
company.
handyman services company, a property management, and by the way, I was always like, oh, that's my wife's business. I'm really the one that's just fixing and flipping the assets, right? And so I happened to get my license purely to get referral fees. That was the only reason why I got my license. And so what was interesting about getting my license was that kind of took me down the journey of learning that game, the agent game, a little bit. And I'll let you guys ask questions about anything that I just said, because there was a whole lot that I just gave you, lots of learning lessons in what I just gave you. But I won't monopolize the mic.
But you still have the maintenance company to this day, right?
Well, yeah, we have all of those businesses still. What we did, though, was we sold off the, long story short, what happened was, you guys remember in 2008, what happened was everything in our market.
July 2008.
I remember
July 2008.
Yeah.
Everything was on sale.
Yep.
Like everything. Every sign in the yard was either a foreclosure or a short sale. And I remember talking to a friend of mine and saying, these properties peaked. This was Herndon, right? These townhouses peaked at $350, $375, and they're now trading for $150, and the rents are $1,500 a month, and that's a 1% rule. And like I don't know when that's happened in this market. Like I think there's opportunity, but it's a little scary. Everything is crazy.
That's right.
And he said, well, if you find that, I will fund it. And so we just went and we just started buying one a month, right?
That's it.
And so my mind started shifting away from that Cumberland market, right? And started focusing back in the Nova market as the assets were 50 cents on the dollar.
Yes.
And the license was just allowing me to get into the properties quickly and make offers and do all that, play all that game, right? As an agent investor. And then, I think we've all talked about this by like 2010, I was like, guys, this thing is inflated. I'm like, everything is back. Like I was waiting for the shoe to drop again, because remember, I had just come out of like a tech recession and had just gone through like a real estate recession. I was like PTSD that there was like a recession always around the corner, right? Which made me super conservative in my approach to how I live my life, and made me conservative about like how we ran our businesses. Right.
Well,
so at this point, do you have real estate agents on your team yet? Have you started building that part of it yet?
No, that didn't start, guys, until 2009.
Oh, okay.
Right. So what happened was in 2009, and this was a mistake, right? Like in 2009, I was like, hey, these properties, like it wasn't a mistake, but like I should have just kept buying for like the next,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
5,
in
6, 7
retrospect,
years.
boy.
I stopped, right? I really stopped. I bought a lot between the ages of like 30, I'd say 25 and 35. And then, then I slowed down because I had like a pretty healthy sized portfolio. I was like, let's digest what we already have. Let's stabilize that. And the license happened because I had a friend that was a builder and he was having a hard time selling new construction homes in Arlington that he developed.
Yeah.
And I helped him sell a couple of those assets. And I'm like, oh, let me get this straight. I got to work with a friend. I got to sell a super high end product. I made like 40 grand without any risk. I was like, maybe I need to do more of this and continue to buy assets, but like at a slower rate. And so my brain started shifting from purely investor to agent investor. And I found that I was really good at the agent game. Like I was really good at generating business because I had a large database of all of those tech salespeople. Remember those tech salespeople that, right? So I was good at staying in touch with people, and all those people just ended up becoming my clients, and they were the seed of really that real estate team. So from 2009 to 2018, my brain was just focused on building the team, and I was buying some real estate here and there. But it wasn't until 2018 when I was like, Rob, wake up. Look at where all your net worth has come from. It's come from buying these assets.
Right.
Let's continue doing that. And so I went back into an acquisition mode around 2018.
And so then what does your real estate team look like now?
Sure. So we actually, our businesses, we have a portfolio of businesses, right? So Casa, which is what we're known for on the agent side, we have, I want to say maybe like 60 people in that company. It's 30, almost like 40 agents, like 30 agents and change with support staff to support that business.
So 40 agents, and I think you've got one of our guys in there now. Richard Yoon is signing on?
Well, Richard, yeah, he's going through the 30, 60, 90-day onboarding, right? Everybody has to earn the right to be on what we call a Navy SEAL team. So Richard is in that process, right? We incubate people on, we test them. We want Richard to be able to run and build something in the DC Arlington market, right? And run a pod. So he's got to go through that 30, 60, 90. Here's what's interesting, guys. Most real estate agents, they get into this business because they want the flexibility. But in order to really build something, like discipline is what sets you free.
Yep.
And so we need to test people in this 30, 60, 90 to see if they've got the discipline to build something, right? You could always be a great lifestyle agent and make money, but we want to teach people how to actually build businesses
But what does that
and buy
mean?
assets.
But what does that mean? Are you talking, you want them to build an agent business and an investment business, or an investment business? What does this mean, building what?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I take agents on what I call like a leadership journey. They go from being an individual agent, making money. I call it like you got to learn how to ring the bell, make money. And then what has to happen is if you actually truly, you got to do something with that money, right? You have a decision to make. You got to take that money and buy assets, right? Assets could be businesses, right? But assets, pieces of real estate, that's what we know. And you got to transfer that over. So I call that building the wealth machine. Build a cash machine to build a wealth machine. Now, some people on that journey want to go on a leadership journey. They want to actually run a team. They want to build an office. And within my platform, I've created the ability for them to run a pod, a team, where they get overrides and revenue and profit share off of that pod that they're running. And it's not for everybody. It's for the people that like raise their hand and say, hey, I want an asset that generates an additional income stream for me. And so we're teaching them to go from agent to owner to wealth builder. That's how I think about it, right? And by the way, it's the same journey that a wholesaler might go on, right? They're wholesaling real estate and they're like, okay, I need to take this real estate and I need to buy investments long term.
Flip it, yeah, or I'll hold them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly our roadmap, except the difference is you're going from wholesaler, build your capital stack, fix and flip, build your capital stack. But then you got to take that capital stack and you got to invest it in what we call passive income strategies. Even though owning rentals isn't passive, it could be. Owning commercial properties, becoming an asset-based lender, investing in a syndication, investing in a pooled mortgage fund, and investing in tax lien certificates. So we take your same philosophy, except we just strictly do it from the investor side.
Yeah, well, we do it from the investor side too,
Yeah.
right? Meaning, like, remember, like, being a wholesaler and being an agent, same damn business, guys.
Yep.
Like, this is what people don't understand. It's
Right.
like, it's a sales and marketing business.
Well, I
One
think
is
people
your,
are understanding it. That's why we have all of this legislation in Virginia that doesn't allow for it anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's crushing these wholesalers.
it's you're controlling real estate with a piece of paper,
Right.
right? And you're just turning that paper over through commissions, or it might be a wholesale fee,
Yeah.
or fix and flip. But then you have to do what you guys said. You take that capital and you got to deploy it a couple different ways, right? You could deploy it in another business. You could deploy it in a piece of real estate. And so we call that building your wealth machine, right? It's like, and instead of passive income, Charlie, you said it best. Like, I call it highly leveraged income.
Yes.
You're looking for highly leveraged income.
That's right.
No such thing as passive, just highly leveraged.
Yeah, but you're
And so
doing both, though. You're creating highly leveraged income by using leverage from a financial standpoint, but you're also creating a highly leveraged business using people. And
Yes.
so you're actually doing both.
I am doing both.
Yeah.
And by the way,
Human capital and economic capital.
that's right. That's right. And the human capital, that was a journey. It was hard. It's still hard, right? It's like,
Oh, yeah.
Nothing
the asset
really.
does its job 24/7, 7 days a week. Like, it doesn't
right.
talk back. It
That's right.
does, right? But nobody told me that was a decision tree I needed to make. I just thought, because I saw other people doing it, that's what I needed to do. And once you're pot committed, you're like, well, damn, I'm on this journey, so I might as well just keep seeing this
Figure
bad
it
boy
out.
through.
Let's go.
Right?
Yeah, I got a full house. Yep.
Well, and our focus obviously is an educational podcast, and there's a couple things out of that I really like, and not this aspect, but that you were punched in the face a bit by the economy and other things, and learned from that, and are continuing into this day, continuing to adapt to what you learn and what you know in the marketplace, and then of course the key thing is finding the right people to work with. A lot of the real estate stuff, most people should be able to learn. It's a question of finding that drive to want to put something together. And then I think from our standpoint, we're old enough, we like the thought of passive, that at some point, maybe you put your hand in it here and there, but it's much more passive, like a pooled hard money fund or even a REIT or whatever it is you do. That's another way to go. But I love, because as the great philosopher that wrote The Walking Dead said, people are the human capital in the zombie apocalypse. And so you will be ready for that. And it turns out it works in the non-zombie apocalypse. So I don't have the patience to work with people. It's great respect to people who do have that patience. And you're probably recognizing your skill, that you're able to pass your information along and work with people collaboratively. Not everybody can do that.
You like coaching, I'm sure.
Coaching, exactly, that
Yeah.
aspect of it.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because I realized that I did have a coaching bent, which is why I started Grid in the first place, right? Grid wasn't called Grid back in the day. It was the Casa Investor Network, and it was
Right.
just like me and like 5 people in the room, right? And then it grew to 10 and 20. And what I realized was that I did it first because I just wanted to be around cool people that liked what I liked, right? And we wanted to
Like-minded
talk
people,
shop.
right? Like-minded
That's
people.
it.
Sure.
And then what happened was I looked up one day and said, damn, like, that deal came from the room, and that deal came from the room, and that person came from the room. And I realized that investment group became like just a massive lead gen tool for my business,
Right.
which is why today the way we think about Grid is that Grid is a top of the funnel, activity where we get to pour into people and helping them understand this game of real estate investing, right? And by the way, my main clients are builders, developers, investors, right? So
what does grid stand for?
I'll give you the original OG of what it was for. It was, we really believe that the power is in the network that you connect with.
Yep.
So think power grid, right?
Oh,
it
cool.
was,
yeah.
It is literally plug into the network, because the network will give you everything you need. Like last night, the network was there. It could provide, like when we were in the room last night, Charlie, right? Like the network has, the money is there. The property manager is there. The construction is there.
Yep.
The agent is there. So just come in and plug into that energy, because it's those relationships that change and transform your life, right? So we've always thought of ourselves as like a power grid almost locally, right? And then we realized as we developed this and we started developing our businesses, I developed what was called like the power grid operating system, which is how to build businesses, like how to run these small businesses that, whether it's an agent team or a wholesale team or, construction, so that they're profitable, so that they actually work for the owners. And everything is a blueprint. Everything is a rhythm. You start seeing like, oh, you could just kind of stamp out the system, right? Which is why today that funnel helps funnel business for Casa, helps funnel business for another business we call Market Ready Remodeling, helps funnel business for Simply Funded, which is our lending side, helps funnel business for True Home Property Management. And, obviously I really run, like Casa's the main one, because that one feeds all of them, right? And that's the one that I pay attention to, but then I've selected leaders to run and grow those other offices.
No, that makes sense. And so tell everybody, how many different locations of grid do you have now? And then what is what I call I'm going to call it, for no better term, a subscriber base. So how many locations do you have now? And then how many folks are involved?
Yeah, so we have 40 locations around the country, right, from LA to DC.
40,
and
okay.
Then we have 30,000 members within Grid, right? And the next evolution of Grid is, how do we all put them into one platform where everybody has the ability to learn and communicate within that one platform? Because everybody's siloed currently. So you've got these like the meetup on purpose silos them, right? And it's not really good at extracting that data. So we want the data from LA, and we want the data from New Jersey, and we want the data from Florida. And it's really hard to get that data. So there's community platforms that are out there. We did a lot of research, and in the next couple months, you'll see us really launch the next evolution of what that looks like for us.
Yeah, but I don't understand. One of the things I'm not understanding is, why do you care about the data in Los Angeles? Are you recruiting agents in California? In other words,
oh yeah.
So this is all from the agent standpoint, right?
So one of the things that we realized, that I realized, right, was that as the real estate team model and the brokerage model started evolving, you started getting these new models, right?
Yep.
And there was a little company called EXP that was the flagship, right? And everybody for a long time, right? Like everybody's like, it's not going to work. It's stupid. It's virtual, blah, blah, right? Like all that stuff, right? Yeah. But it kept growing and it kept growing. And I ignored it for many, many years, right? I was in Keller for 17 years, so you're like Kellerized. And I have the utmost respect for Gary Keller and Jay Papasan and all the leadership team. They're amazing people. And what happened was, as I started growing as a business owner, moving into other markets, I realized how difficult it was to open up a like within the franchise model. Like I'd have to fly to Florida, get on my knees, sit down and talk to the regional owner and say, hey, can we work out a different deal structure? Because we're a really big team. And so expansion into other markets became incredibly difficult. And Gary was teaching us how to expand. He was the OG talking us through how to expand. But the business that he built made it difficult. There was a lot of friction. The regional owners didn't understand. Well, there was this little company called EXP that had created a model where you didn't have to ask for permission to do it, right? That you could just go open anything because
nice.
it wasn't a franchise model. It's like one corporate model, Amazon, right? And I have the ability to sell anywhere through that Amazon model. And so the reason why, by the way, Charlie, we open these 40 different communities is because it's how we get into relationship with agents. Because what I learned is I started exploring those virtual brokerage models, is that I had the ability to act and be like my own broker without the liability of being a broker and without the headache of being a broker. And that's what RevShare is. Another way to think about this is being a regional owner or being a broker owner is no different no different than having a RevShare line, right? And I don't know how familiar you guys are with that idea.
But in a RevShare line though, you don't have to be a broker, correct?
Right. You don't need to be.
That's what I'm talking about.
So
that's what's beautiful about it.
Without the liability.
It's great. Yeah.
You get the benefit without the liability, and you get the law of large numbers start happening, right? Like so now, you look at broker owners. I mean, you guys know this because you were a broker. So hard to make a profit. Like, I know that you guys you probably never had the intention of growing it. Like, you probably had the brokerage just for your own stuff.
Correct.
Right.
That's right.
Exactly right.
That's exactly right.
But brokerage, like traditional brokerage, they're trying to make money, like running that play. But they have overhead and expenses, and their profit margin, if they're lucky, is 3%.
Right.
Which is why I never had an interest to be a broker.
2001,
right?
And it is a rough business.
Well, one of the things that I really respect you the most on is that these brokers do not teach their agents how to be investors and how to grow wealth.
That's right.
Okay, and you're trying to combine the grid network with what you're calling your pods, and you're teaching these guys how to try and grow wealth. And that's the part of it I respect, because one of the last houses that I bought at the courthouse steps, this is only dating a year and a half, 2 years ago, was a house from somebody who was in the RE/MAX Hall of Fame. She had supposedly done so many deals and made so much commissionable money that here I am buying her foreclosed house at the courthouse steps. And that really got on my nerves, because I was like, and the only reason why I bought that house, and we overbid on it, shocker, was because I knew her. And I respected her, and I knew she was still in that house, and I didn't want somebody kicking her out. And because of that, I just got absolutely furious, and Sam will never forget this. I was really upset with the normal real estate brokers on how they left their agents hanging, because my philosophy was always this: if you're in the business, you might as well invest in the business that you're in and manage your own money, because this is what you're an expert at. This is what you know. All you got to do is be taught how to do it. And like you said, the wholesaling business is exactly like the residential real estate farming business from a listing standpoint. The difference is, instead of getting listings, you're just buying distressed assets and you're flipping the contract. Right. It's very similar.
Yeah. So remember how I started, I told you, like, I kind of went down that traditional agent route, and, I was working my sphere and doing all that stuff. Well, in 2018, 9 years into that, I realized, like, nobody's teaching any of these agents around me how to buy assets. Nobody's having this conversation. Like, if it hadn't been for the assets that I purchased years earlier, I'd be wildly disappointed with where my net worth was. And I was like, we need to go on a mission to really help agents build wealth through real estate. Yep. And I need to focus all of my energy on this one vertical, like serving the needs of builders, developers, investors. But the way we serve their needs is by going after distressed assets as agents and helping people through difficult situation as agents. Yeah. And oh, by the way, there might be the opportunity to buy some of those properties along the way.
Yep. That's a similar story.
As agents.
Yeah.
So that concludes part one with our discussion with Rob Chevez. If you want to hear a part two, please subscribe either to our YouTube channel or subscribe to our podcast, and we'll let you know when part two comes out.